This is FBG Jen.
And FBG Kristen.
And I'm FBG Margot, host and producer. You're listening to the podcast that will help you keep a lid on the junk in the trunk and inspire you to live a happy and confident life.
Each episode, we chat with motivational experts and celebs and share our own candid adventures in being healthy.
If you're looking for a podcast that's equal parts hilarious and enlightening, well then welcome to the Fit Bottomed Girls podcast.
Want to live that fit bottom life that's free of dieting today, tomorrow, and every day of your life? Take the first step by signing up for our free 5-day Fit Bottom Reset email course at fitbottomgirls.com/email. A happier and healthier you awaits. Welcome back to the Fit Bottom Girls podcast. This is FBG Margot, and on the line today, we have FBG Jen.
Hey.
And we have FBG Kristen.
Hello.
And guys, we're getting all blingy today. We have Vanessa Lianne on the show today. So one of you talk about how you met Vanessa and what her jam is.
Sure. Yeah, we met her last summer when Jen and I were at the 109 retreat in New York. And she was there to run a workshop along with Sharon, who I think she was episode 99. We talked to her a little while ago. And they really talked about finding a mantra that is meaningful to you. And then because Vanessa is a jeweler, she then helped us kind of take those mantras and make them really nice and concise, or find an acronym for it, and then put them on these pinky rings that are really beautiful and lovely. And they're, if you picture like the pinky ring that you see on like the businessy dudes that are, really large but you see them as sort of a power thing. These are very small and delicate. And that's sort of the idea, is that they're like delicate armor. It's this piece that you can wear, and it kind of goes with everything, but it's a reminder of the mantra that's important to you and helps you kind of stay true to who you are and what you want to be doing.
And what do your pinky rings say? You both have a pinky ring.
We do.
Yeah.
Mine says LIBE, which stands for Let It Be Easy, because I am a big fan of things be easy when they can be.
Live.
Yep.
Which we talked about in the Daniel Laporte interviews too.
That's right.
Part 1, part 2. Yeah, we're like, hey, we liked your phrase, let it be easy, so much that we made it an acronym, and now Kristen wears it around all day, and I have it on art in my office. Blah, blah, blah. Mine is, it's beautiful art. Made with love. Mine is depth, which is a word that previous to this retreat, I had, it wasn't like my word or anything. It wasn't my thing. But it really kind of emerged in some of the workshops and things that we were doing at the time. It was a really cool event that I wanted to remember it. And it was depth it kind of had like a twofold meaning. One was a depth in relationships with other people, to kind of go to the vulnerable places, ask for support, go, not that I'm super into small talk or anything, but, go deeper with the people that you really, really care about. So, and for me to be brave to go deep, because sometimes that stuff is scary. So have depth there. And then also, I think for myself and my body, a lot of times I will get up in my head and kind of overthink things and, obsess about things, to be honest, or worry. And depth for me is a personal call to go to sink a little bit farther into my body, more into my heart, and kind of settle down and check in there instead of just kind of like, having the monkey mind. So it's depth of soul.
Whoa, that is deep.
Yeah,
I cried that entire retreat, didn't I, Kristen?
You did. This is accurate.
Kristen did not shed a tear.
No, but I felt emotions.
You did. And you hugged people.
I did. I hugged people. I made eye contact. It was great.
Yeah. It was
I
Margot?
thoroughly enjoyed it. And I know that both Vanessa and Sharon do, they do workshops and things occasionally, largely in New York, but sometimes around. So, we'll have Vanessa's website in the show notes. So if you're like, oh, that sounds like something really cool that I'd either like to go to or maybe plan as like something that you would want to do with a group of friends or, colleagues or whatever, I'm sure that that's a possibility. She also sells them, just if you want to do your own thing. But
and she does a whole bunch of other jewelry, and she talks about it. Hey, Margot, not to put you on the spot, but hey, I'll put you on the spot. What mantra, what word do you think you'd put on your pinky ring?
I think I would put trust. And kind of like trust in myself and trust in the future. I think like trust that things will work out, trust your judgment, trust your gut. I'm thinking that the whole time you guys are talking. I barely even heard what you just said because all of a sudden I'm like, ooh, what would I want to put on my pinky ring? So I think it would be trust.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. And this is a good interview, guys. I believe we just had a little bit of a scratching sound in a little part of it, but just ignore that. It's a fun interview. Vanessa is just adorable and she's sweet, and it's just been like I said, it's a great interview. And you know what else is great, you guys?
Stickers.
What's also great, you don't have to spend any money at all. Stickers. You can just send us an email, podcast@fitbottomgirls.com, and we'll send you a sticker. We'll send you a sticker that you could just slap on your thermos or your laptop or wherever you put your stickers, you crazy people. So just send us an email, podcast, at fitbottomgirls.com. Follow us on all of the social medias at fitbottomgirls. And also, if you leave a review in iTunes, a 5-star review in Apple Podcasts /iTunes, we will read it on the air. And please tell a friend about the show. And we're really excited to talk about jewelry with Vanessa Lianne. Reset your mind, body, and soul to be a little bit more fit-bottomed in our free 5-day Fit Bottom Reset email course. Sign up at fitbottomgirls.com/email now. Vanessa Lianne Jewelry is everyday delicate armor meant to empower the women who wear it. Trained as a fine goldsmith, each piece by Vanessa is hand-forged with love and care and attention by her at her Brooklyn studio. Using recycled metals and ethically sourced stones, the palpable craftsmanship of her work is infused in her collection and can be seen and felt in every piece. Her jewelry has been featured on the cover of Vogue, InStyle, Cosmopolitan, and also featured in Refinery 29, New York Times, Martha Stewart Weddings, and many more. Vanessa Lianne Jewelry is a favorite of celebrities and cool girls alike. Welcome to the show, Vanessa.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for being on the show today. This is FBG Margot, and on the line today we have FBG Jen.
Hello.
And we have FBG Kristen.
Hey.
And I'm going to ask you the first question. Hello, my fellow Brooklynite. Tell us about your jewelry company. Please tell us what are the standard practices of it, and have you always wanted to be an entrepreneur?
Well, yes. I guess I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur, but mostly I've always wanted to be a jewelry designer. So from a very young age, I always just loved jewelry. I can remember like what all of my parents' jewelry was, like my parents' friends would come over and I can remember like all the jewelry each of them wore. So like better than faces or like people's names, I can remember jewelry. So it was something that I was always fascinated by and really wanted to pursue. And so my jewelry line is called Vanessa Lianne Jewelry, and I also call it delicate armor because for me, jewelry is something that I feel like can really empower you and really can say something about your style or who you are. And I think that jewelry can be a really an expression of yourself. And so I feel like watching adults as a child and like how their jewelry moved and the jewelry that they wore really inspired me. And now I love making jewelry that hopefully empowers people when they wear it. And so all my jewelry is handmade here in Brooklyn, New York. I actually don't use any CAD, which is computer automated design. I make each piece by hand. So I either fabricate it using metal and soldering, or I carve pieces out of wax using like the lost wax and casting method. So carving out of wax, kind of like a sculpture. So I feel like each piece is a little work of art and it's made, to feel really special and unique. And I do also a lot of alternative bridal. So that part of my business is also really fulfilling, making rings that are different, but also feel really unique and personal. So when I work with clients to make an engagement ring, we talk about usually the bride's style, what she does for work, what she's into, and then try to also incorporate some sort of heirloom pieces. So I recently made a custom engagement ring for a woman who loves, I work with a lot of Montana sapphires. So I made one with a Montana sapphire, and then her boyfriend at the time wanted to incorporate something that was sort of a nod to her family, and they're Persian. So we added like a little Persian turquoise that I set on the inside of the band. So something that really, makes her feel like he really knows her and really gets her. And so that's sort of like the jewelry that I try to make when someone gets a piece of mine. They're like, oh my God, it's so me. That really is fulfilling for me. And then I also have another side of my work that I created fairly recently. About a year ago, I started creating these rings that I call Signet mantra rings. And the idea is they're pinky rings, which I've always loved the look of pinky rings. Like I feel like women who wear pinky rings are so elegant, and it's kind of bold, and it's a very like old fashioned design. It's usually been worn by like kings, and it was sort of like a male sort of style, but I wanted to flip it on its head and make it more, I do it for men as well, but the idea for me was like to have these more dainty pinky signet rings that were worn by women, and instead of doing like the initials or a coat of arms, to have something even more personal and to have something that was really deeply empowering. So the idea was to put a personal mantra engraved on the signet ring and then have that worn every day. So, when you're rushing around and forgetting to really be mindful and thoughtful, you see your mantra right on your hand, and you look down on it and sort of be this like talisman. And I was making these rings, and women were creating their own mantras, and it was amazing. And then I had a lot of clients that wanted to wear signet rings, so they didn't know what a mantra was or how to create one. And then I created a workshop around it. So now I do a workshop I call Wear Your Mantra, where I help, I pair with different life coaches or people in the wellness sphere, and we help you create a personal mantra that you can then engrave on the ring.
And fun fact, that's how we actually know Vanessa, is because we were at one of these Wear Your Mantra workshops with her and Sharon, who we've also had on the podcast, which is so cool. And we really wanted to have you on the show because we had such cool conversations with you about mantras and your business and your whole belief, behind jewelry. Because I think for, a lot of us, like myself included, I don't tend to like spend money on jewelry. I have like some pieces, quote unquote, from Target.
Yeah.
And then, I have your lovely pinky ring with my mantra on it. And I have like my wedding ring, and those are the ones that kind of bring me joy. But it made me, really kind of see in a whole new way. And you had such a strong passion for it. I was really curious. And I think we're going to get into a whole bunch more of everything you talked about. But I'd love to know more about, your creative process and where your ideas come from and how you continue to stay inspired.
It's a great question. It's one I've thought about a lot because I do get asked where, what inspires me and where my ideas come from. And the honest truth is sometimes I don't know. And I go back and I'm like, oh yeah, that was, I saw this piece of texture. I saw this, log or like a piece of bark that had a cool texture on it. But my inspiration really comes from lots of different pieces. And I feel like almost it just comes through me. And oftentimes it's like when I'm in a quiet space, like before I fall asleep, I'll come up with a design, or, when I'm just like totally relaxed, sometimes in Shavasana when I'm supposed to be not thinking, it's very relaxing for me to just let my mind go. And that's for me when I get my most inspired ideas. And then because I do hand make all my pieces, I feel like a lot of the process is actually in the making. So I love texture and I love showing the artist's hand in my work. And so, oftentimes I'll have sort of an idea and do some sketches, but I feel like it really takes shape and form when I'm actually making it, because I will sometimes it will be a mistake I made and I'm like, oh, that actually is cooler, or the idea I had doesn't quite work structurally, or, I just like make these slight little augmentations, which, because I'm working on such a small scale, can make a big difference. So a lot of times the design will be changed in the actual making process, which is why for me, making it each one by hand is a sacred part of my work. And then I also, nature is a huge inspiration for me. I'm from the Pacific Northwest, so like I was recently just back home and like being in the forest with these like very large trees, in the rainforest. It's not necessarily like, oh, I'm gonna, take this leaf and make it, but sometimes it's like the way the bark is moving, or like the flow of a certain, piece of driftwood or some stuff like that. Like I feel like those shapes and textures get like imprinted into my mind, and then they often come through my work. So I feel like my work is pretty organic, but I don't like it to be representational. Like I don't usually do like a leaf or like anything that sort of like looks like nature, but I feel like my work has a lot of natural sort of like elements and flows, and I have a ring that's like inspired by like the sand ripple. So like just that like flow, is something that I often find like comes out in my work. So I know that's like sort of vague, but for me, design and inspiration is something that I found really hard to communicate verbally, because it doesn't have words. Like I know how it feels and I know how it comes through, but it's hard to sort of give words to it. So I hope that's not too confusing, but.
Nope, that makes sense.
Yeah. So I love handmade jewelry, and my husband has always been really good about when he's gone on like a business trip somewhere where I don't get to go along, he'll make a point to try to find like a local artist and pick up something. And it's, it doesn't have to be like a super expensive thing. It's just something like meaningful and maybe representative of the area, and bring it back, which I've loved. So I was wondering, do you have any advice for people if they are looking to purchase a gift, some jewelry for somebody? What are some ways that you might recommend that they find out from the person they're getting this for? Like how to choose the right piece for them? Because I know that I really loved how you talked about how you instill meaning in some of the custom bridal stuff. But aside from just looking at something and being like, ooh, that reminds me of Jen.
Right.
What else might you recommend for people?
That's a great question. So I think it's just being very thoughtful, and then also really taking some time to look at, what that person wears and what their style is, and like, do they wear yellow gold or white metals, or do they like dangly earrings? Like stuff like that seems like quite obvious, but sometimes we like forget to really, I think sometimes with like our partners, when we see them every day, we forget to really like look at what they are actually wearing and what they're actually dressing like. And so I think that's important to just be really like conscious of that. That being said, I do find sometimes with men, they'll like buy a piece because their wife or girlfriend has that piece, which like, they're like, oh, she has earrings like that. I'm like, okay, but that doesn't mean she like needs another pair, So it's like a balance between just getting the same thing that she always has and also something that complements her. And that being said, I think jewelry is also just something that's really special and meaningful. And, sometimes it doesn't have to be the perfect piece, but it reminds you of a place or of a time. And, it can be maybe not totally the perfect fit, but, it's a piece that is, evocative of that place that somebody was. So I think jewelry has like meaning all on its own. And then, further than that, knowing ring sizes, knowing how many ear piercings, like stuff like that, I think can really help. But, gift giving is hard, and it's just like, if there's a piece you're like, oh my God, that totally reminds me of Jen, or like I can totally see Jen wearing that, you just kind of have to take a leap of faith. So, some people are more talented, I think, at that than others. But I think, just really trying to be conscious of like some of the details of what your partner or the person you're buying the gift for wears. And then, I when I do gift giving, I also like to try to take a bit of a risk. So like if someone doesn't really wear big earrings, but I know these like larger hoops would look great on them and they're light and they're comfortable, sometimes I'll just like go on a limb, be like, I know you would never wear something like this, but I think it would be great for you. Like just try it. And often, then that's like the hoops they wear every day. So that's a hard question, but hopefully that's sort of an answer.
Yeah. Well, and I think that that's such good advice to, like, when you know somebody quite well, to encourage them to try something new. Because we're so used to seeing ourselves exactly the way that we look all the time that it can be really hard to branch out into something else. Even if you think like, oh yeah, I love that, but it looks good on other people, not me. Sometimes it's really just a matter of, not being used to seeing yourself with big earrings. So if you give that sort of thing a chance, like I talk about that a lot with my friends with sunglasses. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, sure, it looks weird because you've always been wearing aviators. So, take this pair that I've got, try them for a couple of days, look at yourself in the mirror and see if it changes the way you feel about it. And I mean, I would say 9 times out of 10, once they kind of aren't so shocked by seeing themselves looking a little different, they end up liking it if it's something that they liked on other people. So I think your advice is spot on.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because sometimes people will be like, oh, I love that, but I can't pull it off. Or like, I can't wear big earrings. I can't wear that big ring, or like, and it's like, why not? Like, that's just what you're telling yourself to be true. But like, I'm always like, just try it on, like, I feel like sometimes people feel like, oh, cause like, it will draw too much attention to me, or they have like all these beliefs around what they can and can't wear and, what that says about them. And sometimes I feel like, I think that's why jewelry can be so empowering sometimes, because you put on, a bigger pair of earrings or, a bigger ring or something that sort of, either you got that job or like something that like was really empowering or it was passed down. So it has that sort of meaning. But also I think if it's a piece that like makes you feel cool and bold and is somewhat out of your comfort zone, I feel like that so many times I've encouraged people to just give something a try that they wouldn't normally. And, they feel great about themselves because it's the reason they don't think they can do it is because they just didn't have the confidence. But the truth is that they can pull it off. You can pull off whatever you want to,
So I want to go back to the I Wear Your Mantra workshops.
Okay.
And so tell us, how has this transformed your life? You've only been doing this for a little over a year now. Can you tell us like how has your life changed since you're holding these workshops?
So it's been such a transformative, beautiful addition to my work and my life. I had the idea a while back, but I feel like over the last year, I've really honed in on what it is. And honestly, doing the first couple workshops and having these women come in, and usually nobody knows each other and everyone's wearing their masks and, just sort of like a little weary, like maybe haven't really done meditation before, doesn't really know what a mantra is. Like everyone's sort of like a little on edge. And then, we do these beautiful workshops. And at the end, it's like everybody is so open and they've shared so much personal information. And it's not necessarily like, gossip personal information, but just like what they're really dealing with. And I feel like the empathy and compassion that is created in that space is so beautiful and so empowering. I didn't realize really the sharing component, how empowering that is for everybody there and for me included. You think we all look at each other and compare or like think that, the other person has it better or like the grass is greener. But, the truth is everybody has their own stuff that they're dealing with. And like, it's just sometimes a different color or a different thing. And you really don't know what's going on with anybody else. And so, taking this time not only to tap into your own intuition and really get in touch with what's going on for you, to sort of be in a space where you can sort of get a little glimpse of what's going on for other people, I think can be really beautiful and empowering. And for me, the last year with things that are going on in the world and, things in my own life, just to create this space for, and we want to do more with men as well, but it's been mostly for women, and just to create this space of safety and openness and sharing has been something that's so truly fulfilling for me. And then, to also create these rings. So, I love making jewelry. I think it can be super empowering and meaningful, but to really know what someone's mantra is and what it's about and what it means for them. And then while I'm making it, it's so meaningful to me and so fulfilling to know that like this ring means special thing to them, or it's going to make them feel braver, or, I've unfortunately had a lot of customers, that are sick or battling cancer or battling something, and they will order a ring and they'll put something like alive or strength or, something like that on it, and they will tell me about it. And for me, that's just like so fulfilling to be able to do that work. And then sometimes, clients will email me and they don't know what their mantra is, and they're sort of like, I had one customer who, had just recently had a recovery, and she was thinking she wanted to put like something about, free of cancer or something like that on her ring. And then she was like, no, I don't think that's right. I want this to last forever. And so we kind of like worked through it together. And I was like, yeah, let's put something about like how amazing you are that you have been able to overcome this, and something that makes you, that you'll carry through. Like, the sickness is over. So like, let's put something on it that's, reminds you of how brave and strong and amazing you are. And so she ended up with like the Latin word for strength. And I think it was like, I don't even know how to pronounce it, but like Odax or something. And that was really cool to like go through that process with her and then create something that is going to sort of like be an heirloom for her. That, is a reminder of that time, but also a reminder of how amazingly strong she is, opposed to like that she was sick.
Are there any other mantras that you've had that you've just been like, whoa, that just like really stand out as unique or interesting or just different? Or is there one that just like comes up all the time?
Well, so my mantra is WTF, and that is my most popular mantra. So that's the one that I put on my original Signet ring, because for me that was like, I'm an entrepreneur, I live in New York, dating, like life is always up and down and crazy and good and bad, and, there's like highs and lows. And so I find myself being like, what the fuck all the time. And usually it's, a good thing. Like, I can't believe this opportunity came my way, or I can't believe that happened, and so that for me was like a mantra that was sort of lighthearted, but also like, for me shows like the amount of work and the amount of grit I put into things, and also to take things a little lighthearted, and also that you really don't know what's going to happen. So like, kind of don't sit in the bad part, but like just keep moving forward. So that WTF is probably my most, popular one, and I had no idea it would resonate as much as it has, with my customer, which is really cool. And then, so the other one that was, there's been so many, like, I feel like I could write you guys a list of all the amazing, that's like how the workshop happened, because women were writing me with these mantras that I was like, this is so cool. Like, a lot of them are like, I don't know if you can curse on your podcast, but a lot of them have the F word in it. But, it's like, don't give an F. And then Lena Dunham actually got one that was, can I curse on your podcast or no?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Have
fun.
Just a warning.
Okay, just a warning. So Lena Dunham got down to fuck, which I was like, okay. But then she wrote this whole thing about how, she's down to fuck with feminism and art and activism and supporting artists and supporting women, and just like, it ended up being a super empowering mantra. And so that also became a popular one that was, it's like a little bit more bold. And then there are beautiful ones that like Lux, which is Latin for light, or also more like uplifting, or calm is one that I actually really love, because I just like the word calm almost like makes you feel calm when you just see it. So I think it's really cool, because words can be incredibly powerful, especially when they hold meaning for you. When they come from you, a word I think can be incredibly empowering.
Yeah, I think it's great to remember that like it doesn't always have to be super serious, and like a lot of things can hold meaning like that. So you mentioned Lena Dunham. And so, I mean, you've really had quite a few celebrities wearing your jewelry. And if I'm not mistaken, Katy Perry wore your jewelry on the cover of Vogue. Is that, I mean,
true. Yes.
Yeah. So what is that like? Like, what does that feel like to you?
That was very cool. So that was pretty early on when I started my collection. That was sort of, surreal situation where I had a meeting with Vogue and they had like some pieces and, that was like before I had fully gone on to start my business full time. So I was still working, my background is as a goldsmith. So I was working as a goldsmith and I remember I was like at the bench at work, and I was doing my, my own line sort of part time. And they emailed me and said, oh, they need like information, about the pieces they were using in the magazine. And I was like kind of confused. And then honestly, I didn't know I got the cover until I was like at my grocery store. I was like living at the East Village. And I remember I like saw the magazine and I was like, oh my God, that's my ring. Cause I knew they had used it in the spread, but yeah, I remember I was like, I went up to like the cashier. I was like, that's my ring. And she was like, are you going to buy that? And I was like, yes, I'm going to buy that. But, I was like so excited, could not care less because New York is awesome like that. But yeah, so that was a very cool opportunity. And, to be just starting my line and have that was, kind of unbelievable. And yeah, and I've been very lucky. Like I have, a really, awesome celebrity following. And it's nice because it's all very authentic. I don't pay for any celebrity spots or do anything like that. I have just had the opportunity that celebrities have, bought it and like it. And, then sometimes, I've created relationships with them. Yeah, it's been pretty cool. But for me, truthfully, like the real people that wear my work, that for me is the most fulfilling. Like it's very cool when like, Florence of the Machine wears a signet ring and Lorde wears a signet ring. And, there's some pretty like iconic sort of like, celebrities that I'm like, oh, that's so cool. Like I really look up to them. But, real women that wear my work is for me is the best.
That is so cool. And what a great perspective. I mean, all these amazing people have it, but you still really are more jazzed about regular peeps like us wearing your jewelry.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you. I mean, and I don't know if there's one solid answer, but what is kind of like an average day like with workouts or with working and, what is your average day like? What is it like to be Vanessa?
Oh, such a good question. So it's always different, which is kind of fun. I do try to, keep sort of an active element. I mean, I'm running around a lot during the day, but I do try to take some time to either go to the gym or do a yoga class at least like 3 times a week. And then when we were at that workshop upstate, you guys really inspired me to do some more gym activity because it doesn't have to take that long. I feel like sometimes I'm like, oh my God, it's going to take me like an hour to get to the gym, an hour to do the gym, an hour to get home. And it's like a 4-hour event. So, it's also nice to know that you can sort of like get a lot done in 20 minutes at home. So that was very helpful. But so my average day, I usually wake up. I sometimes annoys people, but I don't set an alarm. I try to just wake up naturally because I feel like that's just sort of the best way for me to start my day. So usually I get up around 7:30 or 8. I'll have coffee. I'll do some emails. I will, work on whatever is the most pressing. And then I head to my studio. So my studio is also in Brooklyn. It's about 4 blocks away. And it's in this old factory building. So it's all artists that are in this building, and it's owned by one woman, and it was an old candy factory. And so, it's also a very inspiring space because it's like has these beautiful tin walls and just like a lot of texture and a lot of character. And so I really love the space in my studio. So usually I will go there in the morning and do whatever sort of like jewelry work is needed for the day. So, I might be working on a ring or a new piece or something like that. I usually try to carve out some time to work on the bench. And then after that, it's really depends like what meetings I have, or oftentimes I have to go to the jewelry district, which is in Manhattan. So I'll do that. So that's where I source all of my stones. So everything in my collection is sourced as sustainably and ethically as possible. So I work with very specific vendors that I've worked with for a long time and have a relationship with. And that's where I get my stones. So if I'm looking, for a stone for a client or a new piece, I will usually go and meet with a couple different vendors and see what they have. And then I also do my casting up there as well. So I'll have meetings with my caster. So I do sort of like a whole diamond district portion. And that's usually the end of the day. And then after that, I will try to do like a yoga class or go to the gym. And then depending on what evening activities I have, dinner meetings or social dinners, or I'll just come home and make myself dinner and call it a day.
I know when we were together, we talked a little bit with you about how you chose your stones and how some of them were just had a really interesting I felt like take on it, and a whole entire world I wasn't even aware of. It's kind of like, you would seek out those kind of original, almost what would be called by some people imperfect. And I thought that was such a beautiful thing because, we all come in different shapes and sizes, and why do we only want the perfect diamond? And there's so many other beautiful things in the world, Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Sure. So that is something that I have always been drawn to. I love the beauty in imperfection. And so I think one of the skills that I do have is choosing unusual stones. So like I said, all the stones that I use in my work are, I try to, as best as I can, have them ethically and sustainably sourced. And then sometimes that, works with stones that are considered like less desirable. So for instance, I do a lot of work with Herkimer diamonds, which are actually a crystal. They're a rock crystal that are sourced in Herkimer, New York. And usually they're like a clear quartz crystal, but I love the ones that have some black inclusion. So they have like the carbon in them, and they have like a full double helix shape. So they have like the 2 points on either end. They look like a real crystal shape. And I love the ones that, either have like a little bit of black inside, or they'll have like a little baby crystal on the end, or, they're just really organic and unique and one of a kind. And so, it's hard to even order them, because I have to like hand select each one because it's not something that people usually even want. But I find there's so much beauty in that. And then I also use a lot of gray diamonds. So, part of the way that I try to be responsible about the stones that I use is using repurposed or reclaimed diamonds, which means they're antique diamonds taken out of antique jewelry that's no longer needed. And so they're stones that are already been unearthed, and they're just sitting around in, safety deposit boxes or in unworn jewelry. So I have a vendor who, collects these sorts of stones, and often they have a lot of imperfections and they look old. And for me, that is such a huge part of their beauty. I think, an antique stone, an antique diamond, they were cut differently. The colors were different. They were like not nearly as perfect as new diamonds are today. And I think that history and that sort of like vintage, like they look like they have a story. And to me, that is just so beautiful. And so, not only are they more ethical because we're not, sourcing new diamonds and all that goes along with that, but they're also, I think, have such a unique beauty, and they're so unique. Like, if you get a big white diamond and it's perfect, it's going to look a lot like another perfect diamond. But if you get something that's more imperfect, I think, that is unique, as we all are. And I think that really sort of highlights the beauty. And then I feel like the settings that I create, because they also have this handmade feel, it almost gives it like a vintagey, like an updated vintage look. And that to me is just more beautiful than anything that's perfect.
Fun fact, Vanessa. I was in upstate New York a couple of weeks ago, and I went into a little local jewelry shop, and they had Herkimer diamonds. And
cool.
You were the first thing that popped into my head was your name. And it's cool because I'd never heard of them before talking to you about them. And I looked and I'm like, oh, these are really cool. And they had some that were kind of perfect looking, and then they had some that were definitely not. And
Oh,
I just
awesome.
had a different appreciation for it after talking to you about it. So thank you
Oh,
for
I'm
your
so
perspective.
glad. Yeah. And I think that's also a big part of being educated about jewelry. And I feel like with my clients, when they want to come to me because they want an ethically sourced stone, or they want, something that's handmade and original, like you were talking about the way that you buy jewelry, or like the pieces that you have. I think, you don't need to spend a huge amount of money on jewelry, or maybe you buy one piece that's more of an investment, but then it also like has so much more meaning, and, you're really mindful about that purchase. And I feel like that's another part of my job, is to really educate people about how jewelry is made, how the industry works, and that how your purchases have such a strong impact. Because people often are like, well, what can I do about it? But where you put your money and what, the way that you buy things has such a huge impact on the industry, and like, whether things are being made ethically, or whether people are being treated properly, if that's something the customer and the consumer cares about, eventually that sort of trickles back to the producers. So
Yeah,
I feel like that's something that's really powerful too, if you can like make really mindful choices. And, you can do that with the food, and how you take care of your body, and what you put in your body. I think it's also important what you put on your body. And, I think the idea that I know, fashion can be fun, and it can be very expensive if you want a lot of pieces, but I think if you shop mindfully, you don't really need that, how many outfits we really wear, but if you invest in quality pieces that are made well, I think it makes you feel good. And I also think it has such a positive impact on the earth.
agreed. Are there any sort of certifications that, if somebody is looking to shop for ethically sourced jewelry, like, are there questions that they should ask the person from whom they're buying, aside from, of course, just coming to you because we know this to be a fact? If they're in a shop and they find something that they love, how can they know more or less, like, what the history is?
Honestly, it's incredibly tricky, and it's something that I'm working towards. And I feel like a lot of, people that I work with in my industry, like a lot of the colleagues that I surround myself with, we're working to make the jewelry industry more transparent, and it's really not. So the problem mostly is that it's hard to know, because it's a very old, I don't think it's as much like an evil industry. It's more just like super old fashioned, and it's all, based on trust and a handshake, and this sort of like, many of my vendors don't take credit cards. It's all cash. Like, it's just very old school. And so, to have sort of these like certifications, or like there's the Kimberly process, which I don't know if you've heard of, but this is a process that has been put in place to sort of trace diamonds to make sure they're not blood diamonds. But nothing is 100% sure, because it's really hard to trace, and a lot of times stones will be cut at the same place, and they'll just bring boatloads of stones, and they're all being cut, and they're not really being separated. So, the Kimberly process helps, and it sort of helps like separate and trace the diamonds. But at the end of the day, you have to really trust the vendors, and they have to trust their vendors, and it's sort of like a chain reaction. Some jewelry designers try to work with specific mines, which can be really helpful. But, if you just go into a jewelry store, unless they really know the designers that they're carrying, and, exactly where the jewelry is from, it can be tricky. But, jewelry definitely that's made locally, that's made in the US, like if it has that sort of stamp of authentication going for it, that can really help. But there isn't really, you can't be like, oh, I want this sort of certified jewelry. Like, that just doesn't exist yet. Hopefully that is something that will happen in the future. And hopefully, I think that my dream is that it's not even a question. Like, jewelry is made more ethical. We can be, I don't know if that's even possible, but I think with clothes and food, like the idea of like organic is become so much more mainstream. And so eventually it'd be nice if jewelry was a stamp of like where it's made and who makes it. But honestly, it's like due diligence. You have to do the research. You have to sort of look up the brand, see what they stand for. And then it's, trust. And it's funny because I feel like the jewelry industry is a funny place with trust. Like I feel like sometimes, especially when I have, men come into my studio and they have found me. So like they already are looking for something authentic and ethically sourced and that sort of thing. But you can tell that they come in with like this idea that like buying a diamond is dangerous and they're going to get ripped off, and they kind of like have their back up, and it's because the industry has sort of failed people in, some ways and has not been that transparent. But I really try to educate my customers and, I want them to feel totally comfortable. And like, I am not in the business of ripping anybody off. Like that is 100% not something that I'm interested in doing. And, just making sure that they understand. And they also come in with all these ideas like, oh, like I need to like buy a diamond and that's like worth 3 months of my salary and all these like sort of De Beers marketing ideas. And it's like, no, like you should spend whatever you feel comfortable spending and whatever, you think will express your love to the person you're proposing to. And there's no rules, you can do like whatever your budget is. I will help you create something beautiful that maybe has like a moonstone or a pearl or like a stone that's different but special but within your budget. So I think there's a lot of sort of like myths out there that I'm hoping to help dispel, because I think jewelry is just something that is so special, and I sort of hate that there's this sort of like, I don't know, this weird element of the rip off around it, because that's definitely not anything that I want to be part of.
You've given us so much today. I mean, I'm really so glad you made some time to be with us. You're really a great guest.
Thank you.
We're going to start to wrap this up, but I do have a couple of questions to ask you first. But one of them is like, where can people find you? Where can they find your shop? Where can they find you online? How can they find you?
Cool. So my jewelry studio is in Clinton Hill in Brooklyn, New York.
Yay.
But I also I also sell online. So I do, I do custom work for people all over the world, actually. So if you're not in Brooklyn, it's not a problem. So you can find me at vanessalianne.com. It's, Vanessa, VANESSA, and then Lianne, LIANNE. And Instagram is at Vanessa Lianne Jewelry. And there you can see some more of my custom work. And you're welcome. You can email me or get in touch. But I'm always happy to sort of help guide the design and jewelry purchasing process.
And then we just have one more question. We ask this of every single person that appears on the show. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Go for it. Okay. Vanessa, what was the last song you listened to before you did this podcast interview?
Ooh. That is a great question. What was I listening to? Let me look it up. I think it was a SZA song, and let me just see which one it was. I don't remember the name, but I was like literally just listening to it before this. I'm like so bad at remembering the names of, I know the artists, but the names I'm always just like so bad at.
I think Spotify makes that easy. You're like, I'm just listening to music. I don't know.
Right. Totally. It was like, oh, just put this album on, and then like turns into another album. You're like, oh, this is good too. Supermodel by SZA.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, you can find us on Spotify, by the way.
Oh, awesome.
Our podcast is on there.
We have playlists?
We have playlists and we have a podcast.
Yep.
Oh, awesome. Okay,
So
I mean,
like,
I have your podcast downloaded, but not on
That's so cool. Like, have your workout tunes and then listen to the podcast. And
Oh, that's so great to know. Okay, I will look you.
Yay!
Thanks for being on our show today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. And
Love this show? Tell us why in a 5-star review on iTunes and we'll read it on the air. Also, make sure you are a subscriber. If you want to reach out to say hi or have a question about a recent episode, well, feel free to email us at podcast@fitbottomgirls.com. And if this podcast jives perfectly with your brand, consider sponsoring the show. Get more info by emailing advertising@fitbottomgirls.com. Find all kinds of Fit Bottom goodness online and on social media at Fit Bottom Girls, Fit Bottom Mamas, Fit Bottom Eats, and Fit Bottom Zen. And if books and movies are your thing, check out the other podcast I co-host called Book versus Movie, which you can find anywhere where you search for podcasts. Thanks for listening.